I'll give you all a small introduction about myself. I'm Megna, and those of you who played with me know that I used to play with stray dogs. I've been playing Ultimate Frisbee now for about 9 to 10 years, and I've played with the club teams of Chakraa, Dishqiya, Storm Chasers, and Stray Dogs so far. Jaideep and I like moving from city to city every couple of years or so. And I also happen to be the president of the Ultimate Players Association of India. In my non-Frisbee avatar, I work with Google. I'm account manager for their sales team. And the way that I've thought about this session is to just share some of the experiences that I have, and I'll do that in a kind of storytelling format. And in some cases, I will take you through my thought process. In others, I'll clearly articulate what my takeaways are. And for some of the stories, I'll just let you guys, kind of reach your own takeaways or morals from the story that I'm going to share. So I'll start with the first story, which was in 2015, and this was when we were playing the beach championship. So this was WCBU 2015 in Dubai. And I know that I can see some of my teammates from that team on the call as well. So you'll know what I'm going to share, right? But for the rest, this was a game before. I can hear myself. Can everybody please go on mute? Yeah, great, thanks. So that was actually Jaideep. But this story is when we were going to play with Germany, and our team was busy kind of warming up and getting into drills, when the captain of the Germany team to us and asked us if we can give them like a moment silence and if we can all line up because they wanted to play their national anthem. So we kind of abandoned our drill and got into like a horizontal stack, and their national anthem started playing. And just as their national anthem, kind of started ending, we started melting away. But the German team was still standing in line. So we didn't give it much thought, but within a few seconds, our national anthem started to play. And I think a lot of us were just shocked because we didn't see that coming at all. We didn't expect that the German team would have downloaded our national anthem and kind of played it to us just like that. We did end up losing that game. Germany that year went to kind of win the gold. They beat USA in the finals. But I think when people ask me, what is your favorite game or what's your favorite championship, sometimes I'll pick up these moments where it's a universe point finish or it's a medal winning moment. But really, one of my favorite moments in Ultimate has been that game where even though we lost that game, we all walked out feeling really about us. And it was almost a note to myself that no matter what I do, I think when I win, I want to be able to win, leaving that taste both in my mouth and in whoever else that I'm playing with. And that's my first story. The second story that I want to share is about managing the women's team in 2016. So when we kind of got together, we told ourselves that one of the principles that we will use to kind of guide our thought process is to reach out for help as early as possible and ask for help whenever we find the need, and kind of preempt the need to ask for help. And applying for visas we saw as going to be one of the biggest hurdles, right? So I think as Indians applying for visa, the application process is really them trying to find a way to reject your application. So it could be 3 years tax statements, it could be 6 months salary slips, it will be what your family owns back at home, it will be a no objection certificate from work. The list is really endless. So we were wondering what to do when one of my teammates she actually put us in touch with a lady. And when I mean lady, I actually mean the female gender equivalent of a knight in the UK. And she wrote a handwritten letter to the Home Office in the UK requesting them to approve all our visas, right? So if you had asked me like 2 weeks before that happened, if a lady in the United Kingdom would push her application through, I would have laughed at you and said, yeah, that's impossible, or good joke, you know. But really what I take away from this is that asking for help is my biggest lesson. And sometimes I feel that we look at asking for help as a weakness, where we feel that when someone is asking for help, they are coming from a position of weakness, where sometimes we'll have people saying, no, I'm okay, you know, I can handle this, I don't need help. Or there will be people who say, no, I don't want to ask my parents for money. When really asking for help comes from a place of strength. It comes from being really sure of who you are. People who ask for help are typically those who have a lot of self-worth and trust in the strength of their relationships. And I just wanted to share some incidents where I've reached out and asked for help and been really surprised at the results. Where one of this was, I was at a wedding with a couple of my batchmates from college, and we were chatting about what each one of us have started doing after college, what's happening at work, what's happening outside of work. And I got to speaking about the women's team. And one of my batchmates was actually the CMO of Ola back then. And within a couple of weeks, we had a sponsorship kind of chalked out, and they came on board as a principal sponsor. They pretty much, I think, sponsored half of our team's expenses that year. At work at Ernst & Young and at any other company that I've worked for in the past, I've made it a habit to keep my boss and my boss's boss informed of everything that I do when it comes to Frisbee. Right? And Ernst & Young supported two of my teammates while we went to London that year. With Walmart, one of my bosses actually wanted to give me a month's vacation so I could train. The HR team, of course, shot that down. And at Google, when I've spoken about this, most recently, we've had one gentleman come up and sponsor a couple of girls from our under 20 team. I've also got a lot of colleagues who support Project Kale and Pudyador, two of UPI's partner NGOs. So I think when we talk about what we do, and we really believe in the strength of what we do, it's easy to find others who will buy into your dream. And I just wanted to put that out there. The third story that I want to share is actually a bit intense. It's very nuanced, and it's about a couple of harassment cases that I looked at, right? So the case itself was pretty open and shut. When I went through the case contents, there was no doubt in my mind that it was a guilty verdict. When our lawyer went through the case content, she had pretty much the same thing to say. Though the guilty party was actually a friend of mine. And the way that I had experienced that person was that they were really kind, generous, funny, and helpful. And that just served to remind me that sexual harassment is way more prevalent than all of us think it is. Like, I know that sexual harassment is prevalent, you know, having firsthand either experienced like a #MeToo moment or having heard stories from a lot of my friends. But it is, in spite of how much you estimate it to be, it is always going to be higher. The other case that I want to share is where the guilty party accepted guilt, and there was a clear admission of guilt and acknowledgement of what went wrong where, and also I think an openness to share their learnings with the rest of the community, and which kind of, you know, and I'm going to get into a little bit of philosophy here, so please forgive me for that, but really got me thinking that there are no good people or bad people. There are just people, and they sometimes do good things or bad things. And when they do bad things, I actually think that it is the responsibility of the community or the society to give them a second chance. Um, and more than anything, I think both of these events, plus I think experiencing the Bridging the Gaps workshop that Sangeeta and Liz run, or watching some of the interventions that Akshay runs with Project Kale, or even sitting through Smithy's consent workshop, UPI's consent workshop. The silver lining really is that we have a very powerful tool in our hands, which is a mixed gender sport. And we are able to use the sport as a means to reach a lot of young, impressionable kids. And we are able to change the way that they perceive gender, or they tend to experience gender norms and roles. So that really is the strength of what we have. And it goes to the root of the problem, because I think while our country deals with harassment in a way that is most post-mortem, it doesn't really go into years and decades of societal, kind of tuning, where people think that harassment and persistence are two different things. Right, so that's the third piece that I wanted to share. The fourth story is maybe just listing out a bunch of obvious things, but I was having a chat with Sangi, and she mentioned that how we use sport in our day-to-day life is an interesting topic. So I think I'm just going to share some of the things that as a Ultimate Frisbee community we do really well, and some of these things can be applied to our work in daily lives really well. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was that we actually know how to work as a team. And when I say that, what I mean is that we know how to collaborate, we know how to brainstorm, we know how to come together, and most importantly, we know the importance of each role and each athlete's unique strength on the team, right? We don't waste time comparing ourselves, saying, I want to be as fast as, Suhani. Not everybody on the team is going to be as fast as Suhani, or not everybody on the team is going to have that one particular, throw. Whereas in the corporate world, you will see people often having these kinds of thoughts, right? Where they'll say, oh, but I'm smarter than that person. And the truth is, you might be smarter than that person in one aspect, but that person is probably smarter than you in a lot of other aspects. And I think we should be, as sports people, we are open to that. And when I say working together as a team, I feel that sports people automatically share credit. It is really unlikely for an athlete to attribute a win to themselves. Like, you will hardly find an athlete kind of say that, yeah, we won the game because of me, right? And if they do, then their team would, in all probability, call them out for it. Whereas in the corporate world, it is still fairly common for people to not give credit or steal credit, and it doesn't go too far. And as sports people, I think we also have intrinsically a way of picking up on cues where we know that someone is not feeling okay. We really watch out for our teammates, and it could be something really small, right? Like at the end of a 20-minute practice session, we know that somebody who cracks bad jokes all the time has not cracked even one joke. You immediately know that something is wrong. And I think as athletes, it's not just that you know that something is wrong, you also know what to do about it, right? You know which teammates of yours want to be left alone. You know which teammates of yours want to rant or rave or, lose their shit with you. And you know which ones just want a hug or want to talk it out. And I think taking care of your team is such a strong asset that you bring to the board when you're working in any other setting. The other piece that I wanted to talk about was the ability to disagree respectfully and resolve conflict. There have been a number of situations where I've not seen eye to eye with my coach or captain. And I know that, this necessitates a 1:1 conversation where I'll share my point of view. And I also know that when they don't see it from my point of view, to not take it personally, right? It's still on me to go and do my job, because my job is to execute and their job is actually to know what's best for the team. I think that's also a very transferable skill set. But the other piece that I really enjoy quoting to my colleagues at work is the ability to not let societal barriers kind of come in way of our performance. And by that I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I'm reporting to a female boss now, or oh, I'm reporting to this person who's much younger than me. And as athletes, we know that's not important. Like till date, I think Suhani is the best captain that I've played under. And when I say best captain, I'm not saying the best female captain I've played under. She's hands down just the best captain that I've played under. And similarly, Pranav is the best coach that I've played under. He got me from A to B. And Pranav was at least 8 years, 10 years younger than me. I don't know. And at least 20 years younger than the oldest Masters players. And I have a couple of Masters players on the group who will vouch for what a phenomenal coach Pranav is, right? So we know that age, gender are just nuances or just facts that have no bearing on the performance or capability of an individual. And taking that to work, taking that openness to work, definitely kind of sets you apart. And I don't need to really share this to this group because all of you play sport, but we all know that there is nothing that can replace hard work and discipline. But what sets a sports person apart is the resilience. Like we don't give up at the first sign of turbulence. We are so used to losing and winning games. Like I've lost more games than I've won for sure, and I think that's true for everybody, right? Winning, there are very few people who can win, or there are very few games that you can win. So to be able to take a loss in your stride and not give it more mental space than it requires is also something that I think a sports person brings to the table. I'll quickly jump on to the fifth story, which is actually breaking down my life. And I'll start with some of these statements, right? So Vijay had texted me asking me if I wanted to do this chat. And at Google, sometimes they invite me to sit on like mental health committees or women committees, or they ask me to share my on-field experiences. And all of this kind of alludes to the fact that I'm somewhat, if I may use the word, successful, right? Which could mean that I have done something right so far. But really, I am wrong. I have done nothing right? Maybe, hard work, not squandering away my time. That's probably what I've done. Maybe 5%, but 95% of what makes all of us is actually just luck. So if I have a job at Google, which may be aspirational for some people, it's because I was able to go to ISB. And I was able to write those essays or get a good score on GMAT or crack an interview because I went to a English-speaking private school and college. And I was able to go to those schools and colleges because my parents luckily did not, have wants. They prioritized my education on par, if not higher than my brothers, I would say. I was also able to attend school because the city that I grew up in, Madras, was a peaceful town, right? And the irony is not lost on me because while I grew up in Chennai, I could just as well have been born into a Sri Lankan Tamil family, right? I was born into an Indian Tamil family, and that's my good fortune. And if I was just born across the border, I might not be here, I might not be alive. I could be a child soldier. The permutations and combinations of where I would be in life are just too mind-boggling to fathom. So it brings me to this question of what can I do with all this good luck, right? It's definitely not earned. It's just bestowed on me. I've inherited it. And one of the easiest things that I can do with this good luck is to say yes to opportunity, right? And I don't mean that in an opportunistic sense. But what I mean is when people ask me to captain a team, or they ask me to coach a team, or they ask me to volunteer for UPI or volunteer for S4D committee role, or at work they want me to sit on one of these multiple committees, I always say yes. And it's not because I'm not busy. It's because I have the understanding that everybody is busy, right? Everybody is a caregiver, is probably a parent, is a sister, does a lot of housework, probably goes to college, holds a job, so on. But I think when you say yes to every opportunity, you're actually opening yourself up for criticism and also for a host of learning. And uh, so so when I was asked to manage the women's campaign, I didn't know if we could raise 45 lakhs, but I said yes. And all through, it was a learning experience for Ranjini, me, Gana, Jasma, Sangi, Cow, Box. We never knew that we were going to go and play in London till we actually did. But today, like sitting here, like 4 years after that, I can say that I've done it in the past and I know that I can do it again. And that can only come from having put myself in that uncomfortable position, or having proven to myself that it is possible, right? And when you prove to yourself that you can do something, the mental strength and confidence that you earn from that, I don't know, it doesn't come from anything else. But there have been times when I've said yes to an opportunity, knowing fully well that I will be awesome at it. And that was with captaining stray dogs, right? I walked into that saying, hey, I can own this. I have captained national teams many times. I've been voted by the same people to run these teams. But it was a mega failure, right? And it was, I think, one of the worst performances of stray dogs. We ranked 16th, which was the historical record worst performance. And that taught me a lot, right? It made me reflect where I went wrong. And I feel that by doing things right, or being perfect, or being awesome at anything. We only gain things when we make big mistakes or we fail spectacularly. Like, the amount that you grow from that one experience is definitely worth, being shitty. And I'm glad I was a shitty captain, because now I know that if I were to be captain again, I would be less shitty. Another example is when I was asked to run the Sports for Development program for Down to Earth, which is a Bombay-based team. I didn't know if I can handle all of it, right? Because then I was a consultant with Ernst & Young that required shuttling from multiple cities and working nonsensical hours. But I was also volunteering with the UPI as its secretary. And I was going to take this up, which is working about 2 to 3 hours with them every Sunday, apart from working and playing, not working, playing with Storm Chasers, which was 2 days in a week. And I'm glad I did that, because now I know that I can kind of stretch time. I know that going to work, being good at what I do, being above average there, playing the sport, gives me enough time to do other things. Right, and that for me was a learning itself, that I'm really good at managing time. And so one of my friends asked me this. She said, "Do you think you'll be a good president?" And the answer is, I don't know. But with like this massive deficit hanging over my head, with India growing to 138 club teams, with each corner of the country wanting different things, I don't know if I'll do a good job. But I know that at the end of 3 years, I said yes to a job that nobody wanted. And that even if I have failed spectacularly, personally for me, I would come out being a much better person, having learned a few valuable lessons. So that's really my long spiel for my fifth story. And it's also pretty much the end of my chat. I just wanted to share a few more stories about things and people who have shaped me. And I want to mention Dave Tide from Indicor. And they have this one tenet that they teach to all their fellows, which is don't be a consumer, be a producer. And what does that mean for us? Like for any average Frisbee team, it means that, say, any average Frisbee team has 20 people, or maybe if there is a team B, there's about 40 people. Right? Out of these 40 people, there will be 4 or 5 that pull the weight of all the other 40 folks. And these 4 or 5 people will be the ones that come early, clear the field of glass, or kind of pull away the football nets to draw the field, place the cones. These will be the ones, filling the water bottles, planning practices, planning the drills. And the rest of them will consume the experience. And sometimes they will criticize you for it also, right? They'll be like, shitty practice plan, stuff like that. But when you kind of move from being a consumer to a producer, you move to learn so much more, right? You stop thinking only about yourself, and you're suddenly thinking about, how do I make this lesson plan pertinent for the beginner, for the intermediate player, for the advanced player, and how can I give back to community? And being in that position also kind of opens you out to a lot of criticism that otherwise you will kind of sail through life without ever hearing. So nobody is going to come and kind of tell you that something you did was incorrect unless you kind of become a producer. And I really liked that lesson. This will bring me to the end of the chat, but I just wanted to give a shout out to all my teammates and close out with one story. And this is the story of Michaelito, who's my teammate at Stray Dogs. I remember we had just wrapped up practice in Jasola, and we were walking back to the metro station. The metro station is a good maybe 1 kilometer from the field where we play. Right. So I entered the metro and I saw Mike kind of walking out of the metro station. So I asked him, hey, practice just got over, what's up? And he said, no, on the group, somebody's kind of texted saying they've left their water bottle and they don't know where it is, right? So the water bottle could be anywhere. The person could have left it at home, in his or her car. But Mike assumed that there's a good possibility that the water bottle could be at the field, and decided to walk that 1 kilometer back to search for this teammate's water bottle. And I think he found it, and he took that 1 kilometer back, took a metro, and then walked back home, right? So what that episode really taught me is that you can be a teammate, and you can be a teammate across this really wide spectrum. And to be able to always be of use to someone else is such a valid purpose to life, that it is very easy. And I would have done that, right? I would have been like, okay, somebody lost their water bottle, we'll see if it's in the field next weekend when we go. But to then stop and ask yourself, am I willing to make that trek back and search, find it, and give it back to that person? That takes like a special spirit. And I'm really thankful to all the special spirits that I've encountered in my life. They've taught me a lot of valuable lessons. And I hope that I'm able to kind of take some of those and give it to others. That's pretty much it. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Hi, Megna. Thank you so much. Guys, just in case if the call gets cut, you can join right back, same link, same password, yeah? Sorry about that.
Cool. I think
we have one-on-one time with the president. Come on, guys, no question.
Cow is driving his personal agenda.
Was there like a private question? Come on, Cow. Share it, share it, share it.
Oh, yeah, in Zoom you can send private messages.
Yes.
Oh, I thought, okay.
Megna, what does leading UPI involve?
I think it involves being able to prioritize the things that are most relevant for most people in our community. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but say there are people who are unhappy with sectionals, regionals, nationals, and they want to go back to when we had the tour, right, and play those 4 tournaments. I think running UPI means knowing your 138 teams and being able to make a decision that might make some people unhappy, but makes most of the community, I wouldn't say happy, but you know what is right for them. Does that answer your question, or were you asking from some other angle?
That does. I mean, as a follow-up, if say you've taken a decision, so what kind of follow-ups do you do? Do you do follow-ups, or what do you do? Say you feel you could have done that better. So how do you go back on something like that? Have you come across things in that direction?
Oh yeah, many, right? And I'll give you some examples. Like I think, and don't get me wrong, I think when we say something went wrong, a lot of it could have gone right, right? A good example is the U24 campaign from 2015, U23 it was called back then. It was the first time India sent a team. There were so many good things that came off that campaign, right? Like it's a hallmark campaign. Veera just thought about it. Manix was able to kind of put it together. We kind of made a dent, proving to a lot of us that we can be one of those highly competitive teams out there, right? But if we go back and analyze that, and this was one of the things that I was sharing with Manix recently, one of the things that we didn't do right in that campaign was that we didn't have a female assistant coach. And today we are still working to build that pipeline for India. Right, like back then, if we had at least 1 or 2, we wouldn't have skewed all our current coaches, which is Buddy, Pranav, Fox, Cow, Jaydeep. We wouldn't have skewed it to male back then. So I think stuff like that, then we immediately go back and we've kind of mandated in all future campaigns that we will definitely have a female assistant coach. We run the AMAs and we get a lot of feedback from AMAs, and sometimes people also write to us. And we tend to listen to all of that and then kind of inform the next set of decisions. So people did say that traveling was actually really expensive for the 4 national tournaments that we were holding, right? And then at that point, we made the decision to switch to sectionals, regionals, nationals. And I can tell you that people are spending a lot lower. There might be 1 or 2 teams that are spending more in the current format, but overall as a community, we are spending a lot lesser than we would be, if we were running the old format. We know from some of the international tournaments that we can do a lot more when it comes to improving our women's skills. And that kind of informed our decision to introduce single gender. We knew that single gender got a lot of positive feedback at the last NCS, and we will be, I mean, of course, this year there is COVID, but under normal circumstances, we would have definitely grown single gender into a slightly larger event, maybe with a sectional or with a national, something of that sort. Does that answer your question, Vijay?
Thanks. Yes, thanks.
There was some question in the chat, but I lost it. It was about time management. And I think the person's dropped off also, I think maybe. Okay.
Megna, I have a, sorry, go ahead, Sylvie. Go ahead, Sylvie.
No, my question was, Megna said that she thinks that the time management for her is something that works well. I just was wondering, because a lot of us, for example, balance work with playing and with other things, if that's something that you worked on over time, or if there's something in particular that helps do that better, or is that something that...
Yeah, my answer might not be helpful, Surbhi. I think it came very naturally to me. And I also, and I know Manix and Jaydeep keep telling me this, that it's not natural for a lot of other people. So I tend to hold everybody to like a standard that is normal for me. But if I have to break it down, I think I'm able to do it really well because I'm super disciplined. So I actually break my days and times into this call will be for 1 hour. On Saturday and Sunday, I will give 2 hours each for UPI work. On Mondays, it is 1 hour. Every other day is for work and for my personal time. And training is also, very similar. So I have a chart and I color boxes of when I have had enough water, when I've had my run, when I've done my throws, when I've done my strengthening. If I've done UPI work, my work, or any like NGO work. And I know I'm kind of falling off the radar when boxes are not colored, and then I go back and put in a few extra hours to fix that. I don't think I helped you.
No, but it's good. It's useful to know in terms of managing expectations. Thanks.
Madhu, you wanted
Yeah,
to ask?
yeah. So, I mean, maybe a cliched question, but I mean, I just want to understand with all the different roles that you're playing in your life, like at home, at work, with UPI, on the field, with the team, how do you kind of mold yourself differently? Because I'm sure each one of them come with like different challenges. So how do you kind of mold yourself to adapt constantly to different things? I'm sure there are, different challenges that come and sometimes there may be things where too many challenges are there at the same time. So how do you kind of prepare yourself to handle all of that?
Yeah, great question. So I think at work, I am a lot more measured. So if you speak to somebody I work with, they would think that I have a lot of self-control, which is not true at all. If you speak to someone I have played Frisbee with, right, or I volunteer with, because I'm incredibly hot-headed or passionate about a lot of things. But sometimes I learn from the different roles. And one of the biggest learnings from being president itself is to improve on my self-control. And sometimes Manix will tell me, Megna, you need to behave in a more presidential manner. And I would just get irritated with him, saying you're imposing all of these behavioral norms on me. But I completely understand what he's saying, right? And I'll give you this example. I don't know if a lot of you watched the national conference, but somebody had asked one question about, national teams are already selected. So why should I try out? And at that point in time, personally, I was quite stressed because we had just completed a full investigation into the selection of that national team. We had interviewed all the selectors independently, asked them a bunch of questions. There were about 6 questions, and we had asked all of them to reply to us individually on those 6 questions, so we could kind of read, map them, and see if they were all on the same page, right? And to me, like, so much dissatisfaction about the selection of the national team, which really impacts only 30 people out of 10,000 people who play ultimate, and I am spending disproportionate time trying to solve for 30 people and their happiness. I was just like, guys, this is not worth my time. And I also felt like all of these people, Box, Buddy, who are all answering the questions, not only do they actually fund a part of their journey to whichever country it is the championships are in, they don't get paid, right? And they're spending so many hours analyzing these videos, looking at things and so on. I felt it was my job to take the side of UPI volunteers. And I told Kush, hey, let's not answer this question right now. But in hindsight, I think while the right thing to do is to take the side of the volunteers, what is right for the organization is to actually continue engaging in that conversation till the other side is satisfied or sees it from your point of view. And that takes a lot of patience and self-control, and I'm learning. Did that kind of answer your question? What is the best way to keep practicing Frisbee skills at home? So loads of things we can do. I really liked this one thing that my club team does, and I hope club team in Bangalore, ATC. We do club team practices, and one of the things that we do is actually not throwing but pivoting. And it's such a crucial skill set, and we actually have pretty much 4 to 5 months to work on that. So you can practice all your release points and all your pivots without actually releasing the disc. I really like that one. I think soon we should be able to go and throw with one other person, but we'll wait for UPI to release the standard guidelines. But what I learned actually later on in my life was the importance of fitness. Like for at least 6 years when I started playing, I would just show up and play. And then I tore my meniscus, and I told myself that I can't just show up and play. Like that's not okay for my body. And I started strength training, and I would advise everybody in their early 20s to start I can't say that, strength training now, so you don't have to deal with injuries as you grow older. Yep. Wow. Really? Okay. Cool. So I guess that's it. Madhu, should we wind up?
Sure. If anyone else has any further questions, UPA and Megna, I think, are super accessible, so you guys can reach out to them anytime. Thank you so much for doing this, Megna. It was great. Absolutely great.
Thanks,
And love having
Madhu.
both sets of parents on call. I think Rasika has a question.
Hey, Ras, tell me.
Hi, we still have some time, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of time.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you, so you mentioned that you're playing with ATC now, right? So
Yeah.
since you're playing with like a lot of clubs, I'm not asking you the controversial question. I'm not asking you which club you like more. All I'm asking is,
Stray
do you ever
dogs.
feel sad? Okay, I mean, I didn't ask you that, but no, my question was, do you ever feel saddened by the fact that you have been through multiple clubs, so maybe you haven't been able to form as close a bond you would be able to if you'd stayed with, say, 1 or 2 clubs?
That's a great question. And yeah, great question, Russ. I think I'm not saddened by it. In fact, I'm quite thankful for Ultimate because I think it gives us the opportunity to make really good friendships when you become an adult. Otherwise, most people kind of go through friends just making friends in school, college, and that's it, right? Those are where your real closest friends come from. And because I've been lucky enough to play Ultimate, I've actually continued making really good friends. And the ones that matter are the ones that you'll stay in touch with. And right now, it's really easy to stay in touch with, right? I mean, all of us are working from home. So who are those 5-6 people that you're keeping updated about things that are happening in your life? Those are the close ones. So I think it's more, I don't feel saddened by the fact that I don't have very deep relationships because I've moved cities. I think I'm more happy that I've met a lot more people who could possibly become very good friends of mine soon.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, Ananya. So the UPI doesn't select the national team. We have selectors who've actually been previous coaches and assistant coaches who pick the team. What are the important skills and factors? So I think one of the factors that UPI tells the selection panel, and the selection panel nuanced understanding of all the skills that it takes to play, which means that they'll have a good understanding of what a good team requires. And that's not to say that put the fastest 21 people on the squad and they'll be really good. They'll have nuanced understanding of how many handlers it takes, how many handlers who can play the dump position really well, how many handlers can break the mark, which ones of those would you play under windy conditions, which ones of them would you play on the O line, which ones would you play on the D line, which ones would you play when you're going up, that is the most risk-taking ones, and which ones would you play when you're going down, the conservative ones, right? So there are so many questions and skill sets that they look at, but some of the skill sets that UPI kind of puts out is that we definitely want team players and people who will play with integrity and can play with SOTG really well. And if you don't score too well on these two aspects, you can be an incredible on-field value add, but you might miss out on being on the squad. Does that answer your question? Cool. Anyone else?
I had another question.
Yeah.
So I think in response to one of the questions, you said that while making decisions, sometimes you have to be okay with the fact that you're not satisfying a few people, but that's okay. So how do you reconcile with that feeling? Like I've felt like I've also felt that, but I'm just not able to make my peace with the fact that there are still people who don't agree with the decision I make. So how do you feel about that when that happens?
Yeah, great question, Ras. My answer might not be helpful, but I have an answer. I think when you're leading an organization that is made of so many individuals with so many versions of truth, it is impossible that you can satisfy everyone, right? That's a given. Like it just will not happen. And I'll give you this example because it helped me when I thought about it. Obama was a fantastic president, right? And he still didn't get 100% of people voting for him or her. Some of the most successful presidents in the world have only 40 to 50% who kind of back their cause, right? So if they are okay with 50% of the folks not liking them, I kind of reconcile myself to the fact that it's okay if 50% of UPI doesn't like me. Like that's one way to think about it. But I know what you mean, because sometimes it is important to me that people like me. And when they don't, you do feel hurt, right? And previously I would go from thinking about a particular conversation I had with someone about something when they were just not seeing it from my point of view, or even insinuations, right? Like people have called UPI corrupt, people have made all these kinds of nonsense allegations, when really we are losing money and our time working for our community. So it's become better, because previously I would think and worry about it for 1 week, and now that's become 48 hours. So 48 hours I'm allowed to message my friends and say, oh, this person told me this, I'm not feeling okay about it, or this sucks. But after 48 hours I'm just like, hey, you know what you're doing. You have all of these other wonderful people who think you're doing the right thing and that you're on the right path, and you let them down if you allow this negative energy to get to you, and I move on.
Cool. That makes sense.
From national team squad, how's integrity measured? Great question. Who's S? Is Suhani?
Sangi, I think.
Sangi. Okay, great. Okay. So Sangi or Suhani, I think it's measured largely by what comes to light Hi, Sangi. Unfortunately, I can't share a lot of incidents, but some things will get reported, and this can be reported, over sectionals. It could be reported over nationals. We can see some candidates behaving in a way that you shouldn't be behaving in that manner with anybody, let alone your own teammate. And some of those things kind of move towards measuring integrity. Um, uh, so if you are sharing confidential information from your coaching program with someone else, that's a clear breach of integrity as we would see it. But of course, if you think that this is open sourced, your coach is okay with you sharing it, and then you do it, then of course there's no problem. So it's one of those things that are quite obvious, and still people kind of don't seem to think it's obvious and kind of fall on the wrong side of. So,
Thank you so much, Meghna. This was awesome.
thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Vijay. Thanks everyone who tuned in for 57 minutes on Saturday. See you. Have a good weekend.
You better.
Best wishes, everybody.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Mom
much.
and Dad.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.